All right, now let's move on. Bring in General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst and another mentor of ours. General Keane, as always, sir, thank you. So the news coming out of Lausanne, Switzerland, the UN inspectors may be permitted back in to inspect what's left of Iran's nuclear program. How about American U.S. inspectors, General Keane? I mean, I'd like to see that also, because with Iran, as we know, you know, you never trust and you always have to verify.
There's no doubt about that. Look, it's a step in the right direction to bring in the IAEA inspectors who have been in Iran multiple times over multiple decades and have certainly an understanding of what the limitations of their inspections are and what the relationship they've had to go through, which has been quite onerous at times with the Iranians. But this is the president's #1 objective. The nuclear enterprise has got to go. We don't need to get into the details of the specifics. And to do that, I believe he's got to have United States military and civilian nuclear experts on the ground executing his goals and objectives here, and the IAEA supporting that. They should be there because they have so much experience there. But we have to make certain that the president's goals are being achieved here, not somebody that's not related to the United States objectives and goals here, and that's going to try to work between Iran and the United States. No. It's got to be exactly what we're talking about here. And it has to be anywhere and any time. Because what has happened in the past, time and time again, the IAEA was restricted to certain sites on certain days for a certain amount of time. And that was frustrating to them. They can speak for themselves. But that's the reality of it. When they heard that there was a site provided by maybe Mossad, CIA, or Iranian informants, Larry, who were very good and provided a number of the secret sites where nuclear weapons were being exploited. When they came up and said, look, we want to go over here, they weren't denied going over there. That can't be the case here. We will have to rely on our intelligence sources, what we already know, what we're going to learn, informants, and we take a look at the country writ large. This is the president's #1 objective. We need U.S. nuclear experts on the ground, both military and civilian, to carry out his #1 objective.
General, you reckon, speaking of verification and the right kind of inspectors and truth-telling in general, do you reckon it's possible that, you know, even greater damage has been done to Iran, even greater damage than we think, than President Trump thinks, okay? The nuclear damage, the enrichment damage, the industrial base damage, we know about the Navy and we know about the Air Force and the radar. I mean, is it possible we would learn, and I'd like to have our inspectors in there for a number of reasons, that actually Iran's capabilities are even lower than anybody thought, that we have done them even greater harm, thankfully, than anyone thought? Is that a possibility?
Well, that's always a possibility, and it exists because even though we're doing the damage, there's limitations in terms of what the implications are of it. But the reality is the president gets good information. And really, he's got two major intelligence agencies that are providing information to him, because we have people in Israeli intelligence, and they have people in our intelligence, and our warfighters who are doing the shooting and the planning of all of those strikes. We have a general in the Israeli headquarters, and they have a commensurate leader in ours as well. So constant sharing. Even before the war started, the amount of intelligence sharing that took place on the threat dealing with Iran and the proxies was always joint. We always shared it. So we're joined at the hip here. And he gets a huge amount of information about that. What the collective implication of all of it means in terms of how much resolve do they have, how much capability can they really pull together in how much time to be effective, that's a question we probably can't answer as accurately as how much specific ships have we sunk, how many missiles have we destroyed. And that's an analysis question that certainly we have people who do that kind of work, but it gets down to some subjectivity to it.
Yeah.
I suspect Here's an example. We have been moving ships through the Straits of Hormuz now for days and days. And we're averaging about 55 ships a day, every day. And before that, we were moving them through at lower numbers. And the Iranians came out weeks ago with fast boats and drones and started hitting us. And we sunk all of it and destroyed those drones. I think one got through and did some damage to a vessel. We haven't seen a fast boat in 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's an example of something that you're hinting at here, and I think it's an accurate conclusion. What is the impact of that? Well, we see it operationally. I'm not saying they don't have them, but they sure as heck haven't been using them, and we're being quite successful in moving oil through the straits now. Very successful.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. The IRGC says, well, I guess on Saturday morning or something, that they're closing the Strait of Hormuz. The fact remains, all day Saturday, lots of ships were going through, no matter what the IRG says. So they may not even have those capabilities. That's a wonderful, wonderful point. Jenna, let me ask something else that came out of the talks this weekend. This de-conflict mechanisms, which includes, I think, what's going on in Lebanon with the constant attacks from Hezbollah, backed by Iran, and conflicts with Israel. And there's a high commission. They're going to report up to some kind of high table of experts. How do you read that? I mean, I might be for de-conflict mechanisms if I knew what they were and if I thought they were, useful kinds of things. You hearing anything about that, sir?
I don't know the details. It's likely a step in the right direction. A couple of things we have to recognize, though. Iran doesn't have a claim here, Larry. This is Lebanese citizens under the guise of a terrorist organization, Hezbollah, that Iran resources, and the country of Lebanon. So it's Israel who is being attacked right on their border, Hezbollah who's doing the attacking, and Lebanon, the country from which it's coming from. And that they have to be the principals involved here. We have had, so our audience understands, since 1978, we have had the United Nations interim force in Lebanon called UNIFIL, since 78. And then in 2006, we expanded it to make certain that none of the Hezbollah came south of the Litani River, which is about 20 to 30 miles to the Israeli border. None of them are supposed to be there. They came down time and time again, built infrastructure, moved weapon systems, and it's from there that most of the attacks are conducted. There's 8,500 UN troops, part of the deconfliction mechanism that's there. If we're going to put something together like this, it's got to have some real teeth in it. It can't be a fig leaf, is what we have had for 48 years, has not accomplished anything. We got to have something that has some teeth in it, and Israel has to have a seat at the table for all the obvious reasons.
Yes, sir. Israel's got to do what Israel's got to do. It's part of the freedom that is coming to the Middle East. You are so right. General Keane, thank you, sir, as always, for your wisdom and your insight. We appreciate it.